In the 1970s, when I had 3 children and did not have a job at the time, my mother, Ruth Cousins, who was executive director of Psi-Chi, was receiving requests from community college professors who had been Psi-Chi members to start a Psi-Chi chapter at their 2-year colleges. The Association of College Honor Societies would not permit chapters at 2-year colleges at that time. So my mother called me and said, would you help me start an honor society for 2-year colleges so that these professors can have these opportunities for their students? And the understanding was I would help her start it, and when she retired from Psi-Chi, then she could help it grow, and I would continue with my teaching career. So in 1977 or 78, we used APA labels. I sent a letter to all the 2-year colleges that APA had on their list, and maybe heard from 1 or 2. And a couple of years later, we sent out another set, or I did, from Chattanooga, and heard from a few more, but mostly we were hearing from professors who were calling Psi-Chi. So by 1981, we had 11 chapters and had bylaws written up and applied to Tennessee to be a nonprofit corporation. I was the one who signed the corporation papers, but it was my mother's idea, and it was really the professors' ideas. One of those professors who had approached my mother is Dr. Todd Gaffney of Cerritos College in California. So he was one of the charter members and probably planted the seed for the whole idea. She also helped Psi Beta work with the Association of College Honor Societies to have ACHS accept community colleges. So in 1994, Psi Beta became the first 2-year college honor society that was a member and is still a member of ACHS. First office was in our home with my husband, myself, and 3 children. 1500 Lyndhurst Drive in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It has stayed in our home most of the time, except for 91 to 98 when it was housed with Psi-Chi. But it was in an office off the bedroom suite, and I had an old-fashioned typewriter. I typed the newsletters and took them to be copied. Most new chapters came through word from Psi-Chi. They would call Psi-Chi asking for a community college chapter, and they would be referred to me because Psi-Chi couldn't have a 4-year chapter at a 2-year college. Over the years, Psi-Chi was generous with publicity in their newsletters. APA's education directorate helped us. They gave us labels, and once in a while even sent out a mailing for us with a Psi Beta brochure. They included us in their newsletters, and they now have Psi Beta on a website, on their website, as a link, which helps. Back in the 80s, Dr. Margaret Martin, who was president, she was from Piedmont Community College in South Carolina. She developed our first brochure and the first handbook, and that really helped. We had a handbook to send out, and we had the brochure that I ended up mailing to anyone whose address I was given, or to distribute at regional meetings, distribute at APA. we took that brochure everywhere we could. So that really helped, I think. Then in the 90s, Dr. Jerry Rudman, who was president from Irvine Community College in California, developed a website for us. And that had a link to Psy-Chi, a link to APA, a link to APS, and I believe that really helped people learning to search the internet, and it was fairly new at that time. But I think now many chapters come from finding Psi Beta on the internet and being able to print the application forms from the website. Psi Beta would not exist without Psy-Chi having existed and helping Psi Beta develop and flourish. Plus, Psy-Chi over the years, besides helping with chapters and memberships at APA, allowed us to share the hospitality suite. In fact, I would sleep in the room with my mother at the meetings, so Psi Beta didn't have to pay for my room, and Psy-Chi didn't have to pay extra. They allowed us and invited us to co-host speakers. So it gave us a chance to be a part of APA while not spending any money in the early years. And gradually we developed our own programs, all modeled on Psy-Chi. The bylaws were modeled on Psy-Chi. The whole way Psi Beta functions was modeled on Psy-Chi. The only thing we had done differently is we used post office zones in the beginning to set up our regions. And our president, Dr. Donna Stuber, in the 80s, I think it was around 86, asked the chapters to approve matching the regions to Psy-Chi. So a few of our states moved to different regions only so we could match Psy-Chi. And, yeah, we idolize Psy-Chi. They are our model. I wish I could say that Psi Beta blossomed in the beginning and continued to flourish and flourish. It never stopped growing, but it didn't flourish as quickly as we had dreamt. We were hoping there'd be 100 chapters at the end of 10 years, 200 at the end of 20 years, etc. But it has ups and downs. Some years there'll be 11 new chapters, and maybe the worst scenario was a year of 6 to 8 chapters. Some years chapters would have 60 to 100 new members. So nothing was predictable except that you knew it wasn't going to be predictable. Psi Beta is so fortunate with the councils it's had. They will keep it going. It will flourish and blossom the best it can in the environment of educational funds for community colleges and what will happen with community colleges. In a few states, we lost community colleges that had chapters because they became four-year colleges and therefore can no longer exist. So there will be, political reasons or financial reasons for chapters to not be viable, but I think you'll never lose the enthusiasm of the council members and the faculty advisors. Very exciting for all of us at Psi Beta, the councils and myself, was having another professor call and be excited about starting a Psi Beta chapter. And it meant, more members and more interaction between chapters. Sadly, over the years, some become inactive. What we discovered was it depended on the leadership on campus at the time with the students. So even though you have an excited professor, if the students were not available for leadership, then the chapter didn't really go. Or a professor would retire or transfer to another university or college, and then the students were trying to find an advisor. So those are the main frustrations all through the history of Psi Beta, and I think other honor societies. There was a lot of hope for Psi Beta when, after 4 or 5 years, we realized that more chapters were joining, students were continuing to join, and getting very excited about Psi Beta. And students are also calling to start Psi Beta chapters. Then we really knew we were making an imprint on the two-year college campuses. Probably financially was the real clue in the early to mid-'80s. There was enough money, I think, that I had a salary which for the year was the same as what I made a month in other jobs. So the foundation is laid for a successful and beneficial honor society, and that's the legacy for the next 25 years. And I hope the Psi Beta will be fortunate enough to continue to have these delightful, energetic, very creative, great sense of humor advisors who love their students. And that's the reason they do all of this. It's for the students. And the students who have developed the leadership from all of this, and had leadership to even become a member, I just know it will continue, and today's members will be the leaders over the next 25 years. I hope many of you will help Psi Beta continue and continue to grow. Dr. Jim Hale of McLennan Community College in Texas was the first president of Psi Beta. He was one of the 11 charter chapters and professors back in '81 when we chartered the chapter. He was elected by mail. We did everything by mail back then. And I didn't meet him until 10 years later, at the 10th anniversary. He was a wonderful leader for the beginning of this. He was there when we developed the bylaws and chose Psi Beta's colors and designed the jewelry and had our first newsletter. The first National Council was made up of the original 11 faculty advisors. We called them faculty sponsors back then. I never met them unless I met them many years later at a meeting. 2 of those original council members, Dr. Jim Hale and Dr. Todd Gaffney at Cerritos Community College in California, are still faculty advisors and have remained so throughout the history of Psi Beta. The first council did everything by mail. I would mail out the questions with an envelope, and they would vote, and I'd send the minutes to them, which meant the results of the votes. I would send the financial report, and there wasn't much to report. There were no salaries. The only expense was the paper for the newsletters I copied and enclosed with the membership certificates that were printed, except for the names, and the names I typed with a typewriter. Psi Beta is just very fortunate the professors who have been on the National Council. And the presidents are elected from the National Council All of them have been wonderful. Sandy Ladd from California is the one who started the Diversity Project 2000 that she and her council presented to APA and its Office of Ethnic Minority Affairs. Dr. Jerry Rudman started the website. Dr. Rudman wrote wonderful messages for the newsletter. Dr. Ann Ewing is an amazing woman, professor, leader. She really took Psi Beta to work with APA and to work with the Education Directorate. When Ann Ewing was president, they elected me to be an honorary member of Psi Beta, which was very exciting to me. So that's outstanding from her. Dr. Ann Robinson was a wonderful president for many years, and she gave money to Psi Beta to start the College Life Award. And I think she also was the one who wrote the letter to APA to ask that APA make Psi Beta an affiliate of APA. Dr. Richard Miller, he is the one in '91 who worked with Michael Wertheimer, who was the Psi Chi president, in writing the 7-year agreement so that Psi Chi and Psi Beta could work together. That gave me a full-time job, and it was exciting to work for both organizations. One of the most memorable meetings for the Psi Beta National Council was held in Toronto, Canada. Don Irwin, in order to arrive, had forgotten his passport or driver's license. So he had to pay all the cash he could get hold of, which was $100, to get into the country for the meeting. That started off well. And then I had found a wonderful, reasonable accommodation, and it turns out it's a dorm for a college there, and all of us had to share the same bathroom. There was no air conditioning, and it was probably the only week that Toronto has been in the high 80s all week. There was no cross ventilation, no fans. At night, we thought we heard firecrackers. Turns out it was gunshots all around. Found out there were ladies of ill repute at the front door. And one morning when we woke up to go to APA's meetings, which we would walk to save taxi fare, on the elevator was a very nice red sign, and it said something like, "Beware, male robber is loose in the hotel." So we saved the sign, and we saved the wonderful brochure that we had from the hotel. That was a place we will never go to again. Psi Beta is so fortunate with the councils it's had. They have been enthusiastic, energetic, innovative, involved, and I know just about every other national council in the country is envious of what Psi Beta has. Dr. Ann Garrett Robinson came up with the wonderful idea to honor Ruth Cousins with the Ruth Hubbard Cousins Distinguished Lecture at the APA. Psi Beta has numerous awards that have developed over the years, and if I remember correctly, only one came from Psi Chi, and that is the Outstanding Chapter Award, which is modeled after Psi Chi's award. The Carol Tracy Community Service Award was developed by a council, I think under Ann Robinson, and I am really proud of that award because I love community service, and that was early before that became an integral part of education, that award was started. The Research Paper Award started when Dick Miller, a president in the late 80s, early 90s, went to a publisher, I think it was HarperCollins at the time, asking them to fund an award. And they accepted his proposition, which was 3 research papers winning $500, $300, and $200 each. Then the publisher went to Psi-Chi and asked Psi-Chi if they would like to do the same thing Psi Beta was doing. So again, that was a council coming up with that award. And if you consider the Diversity Project 2000 Summer Institute grants as awards, that is totally a Psi Beta concept from C&D Lab with the help of Ann Robinson. The College Life Award is fairly new. That's a very exciting award for chapters or individuals who have an innovative project on their campuses. And again, Ann Robinson gave the money for that award. And that was her idea that she created with the council at the time when she gave the money for it. So we have been fortunate in that we have developed, or Psi Beta has developed its own awards. The most exciting introduction to me was B.F. Skinner. My first meeting in New York was an APA meeting with Psi-Chi. B.F. Skinner was their distinguished speaker, and Psi-Chi allowed Psi Beta's name to be on the program with him. So I did get to meet him, and he signed the first Psi Beta handbook, which is in the archives. I, of course, have met Dr. Phil Zimbardo, who has been our distinguished lecturer twice, standing room only. He's a very exciting speaker. Dr. Robert Sternberg has been our speaker twice. He also was standing room only. Then there are others, wonderful professors who love Psi Beta, love Psi-Chi, Dr. Harold Takushin, Dr. Virginia Sexton, who was the first honorary member of Psi Beta and who started the Faculty Advisor Award for Psi Beta. She was a Psi-Chi president the year I met B.F. Skinner. One of the most rewarding aspects of being involved with Psi Beta is, one, my husband always would go to meetings with me and had been very supportive, and he and I developed great relationships with most of the council members, and that has really been enjoyable. They just fun to be with, to visit with, we'd go to dinners together and just joke around. We've had, what's really fun too was having council members come to Chattanooga and have meetings and set up a B&B in our house with them. So, and those were many of the same members I hope we'll always have lasting friendships with. So it's like a family, very much so. When I started Psi Beta, I thought it was maybe a 25-week involvement, not 25 years. I really did think my mother, Ruth Cousins, would take over Psi Beta when she retired from Psi-Chi. It turns out she didn't retire at 65, she retired at 71, and at that point she was ready to enjoy retirement. And that was when I became a full-time executive director, financial officer. So I had no clue that I would be here almost 25 years. In 1992, the American Psychological Association celebrated its 100th anniversary in D.C. And at the meeting, again, a wonderful national council totally surprised me. They contributed money to the APA building, and in the APA lobby is a plaque, and it says, Carol Cousins Tracy, Executive Director and founder of Psi Beta, which is priceless. But what's even more priceless is this beautiful medallion that was given by APA to the council for making that contribution, and they gave it to me, and I always wore it at the annual meetings, and I still love it. There is also a paperweight that matches it. That same year, a book was written about teaching psychology in the U.S., and my mother, Ruth Cousins, and I, and a psychi advisor, Peter Giordano from Nashville, wrote a chapter about psychi and Psi Beta.